session ahead. So, hello and welcome to the next in our toolkits adventure. This is the third of our series. We have three more to come. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what they are in a moment. I'm loitering on this slide because by attending today, you can register for Aspect's micro credentials. So please take that URL, scan that QR code. And while we have this loitering, Robin, tell us more about the toolkits workshops because you've been a part of this. We did a pilot, and this is our third cohort, and this has evolved from an idea you had that you evolved with Aspect's help. So thank you to Aspect for making this happen.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So I'm Robin from the University of Bristol, and we do quite a bit of work with Aspect as well. And we're, I think, really fortunate to get sort of sponsored to do these webinars. I guess the idea for the webinars came from the fact that we see lots of interesting and exciting projects, some coming out of research at that stage, some kind of doing their kind of impact journey, and others a bit later doing commercialization. And regardless of the point in time, there's usually some support being offered. But what we recognized was there was an opportunity to kind of do stuff around practical sort of skills to help projects and help communicate projects. So that came up with ideas like how to build websites, how to build apps, lots of stuff. And this series is a kind of great representation of that, doing things around AI as well and communication.
It keeps
Um,
evolving. Every cohort's a bit different, and all the things like Canva and websites that we're not doing on this series, you can find on our YouTube channel. So it evolves based upon feedback. AI predictably becomes a topic we talk about a lot because we're all curious, impacted, engaging, but maybe concerned about how to engage in the correct way, especially as academics. Um, thank you very much, Robin. Should we already say what we've
yeah.
got coming up? So we've done AI tools with Blue, which is talking about SciScript and Gamma and ChatGPT. Really, really practical. He had everybody open because we're all again the best about being on a webinar. We can all get on our screens and have a go at stuff. Um, Last time was project communication and planning with Joyanne. We all basically fell a little bit in love with Notebook LMS, which I haven't used much as a tool, and about how we can use it as a safe space to make podcasts out of our projects. That was scary. I'm not sure I'm going to be doing that. The podcast was weird. I really like the cartoons and some of the animations you could do, and infographics and explainers, which we've talked about before. And this is a late edition. So today, April, you were a late edition because we spoke to you. Robert spoke to you. I was like, yeah, we need to get you in touch because involved in this rather because what you're talking about, the feedback to insight, rethinking, progress, and impact, is massively important because we're all working on amazing projects. We all have some ideas about what we'd like it to become. Whether that doesn't mean maybe commercial, it means maybe reaching different people, having different conversations. We gather a lot of feedback. How do we turn that data into insight? We're going to talk a little bit about where that data is because we all gather it all the time. I was running a workshop yesterday and we have this like it feels like a landfill site, most of our SharePoints. It's like how are we really using that properly or getting rid of it? We don't need it. I know, good analogy. And coming up, we've got video storytelling, AI for creativity. Jules is going to be really looking at how the tools are evolving. And what I love about the AI ones is every time we run it, it's changed. Even when you log into the latest version of a notebook, for example, there's new functionality, such as the pace of these products. And then we finish up with immersive technologies, how to use AR, VR, XR, and how to bring a different conversation using those technologies into your projects. We've got some really good examples of how organizations have done that. So sign up for those. If you can't make it, we are recording them all. But what we really like is to have you on this session. And it is webinar style, but we want to hear from you in chat. We're going to ask you questions. You want to be involved. We're going to have a good old rummage around your brain, even while you're on your coffee, because it is what time in the morning there?
Oh, it's like 4 a.m.
Fabulous. So we really want to make sure that we're digging into your brain and keeping you awake for the next hour and a half. So please do ask questions. I'm here to be April's wing person. Keep an eye on the chat. I will always have questions. So let's have a really engaging next 90 minutes. And I'm now going to stop talking and hand over to April. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for such an excellent introduction. Let me get my slides sharing.
Cool.
Let's
And thank
see.
you, Robin, for putting that link in the chat because yeah, brilliant stuff.
Fantastic. Can you see my screen?
We
Everything
can
good?
indeed. Yeah, fabulous.
Perfect. Okay, great. So thank you so much for joining today. Today we're going to be talking about as it says on the tin, feedback to insight, rethinking progress and impact for 2026. But really, what we're talking about are new frontiers in data collection and analysis that can really shift the way we do research and understand communities and everything that you need to do to run a good research project when you're working with people out in the world, but also things that you need to do to have a product that really works in the world. Because I think something, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, something that's kind of misunderstood is a data, yeah, it's helpful for research and it's helpful for reporting, et cetera, but it's also helpful for you if you have a venture to understand whether people like your venture, whether they want to buy what you're offering, right? So we're going to go into all of this, some of the ways that the landscape has changed now and moving forward, and ways that you can leverage that in a very practical way within your projects, within your ventures for the foreseeable future. So, quick introduction. My name is April Stevenson. I really come from the tech space. So, I worked in tech companies in the US for about a decade. My undergrad was in anthropology, and I went back to the London School of Economics to study management and did a lot of kind of research-based work there. So, I kind of work between tech, social science, and there's a very academically informed approach that I take to the tech that I build. But really, ultimately, I'm a tech person. I've worked as an early employee at the P2P payment app Venmo. I've been at PayPal, at Amazon, all of these big places. And my background's actually in decision science. So, how do you use a lot of data to make decisions within your organization? Um, Now I'm the founder of Simba Technologies. We are a mobile-based data collection platform that allows you to use WhatsApp to collect data from communities and turn that into actionable insights using things like AI and more advanced analytics. So today I'm going to be talking these real practical applications of technology, really from the point of view of an actual technologist. A lot of people in tech who talk about kind of talking heads who go up and talk about things kind of come from the marketing department. I am not from the marketing department. I'm from kind of deeper in the product development, again, decision science based way of looking at how you approach tech builds. So
I'm going to go
let
in
me,
my first stupid question for you, April. Tell me
yes,
about decision science. I
yeah.
that sounds brilliant because, as you say, decision making feels very fluffy generally. Tell me a little. I mean, I don't want to go too off topic, but tell me a little bit about that.
No, absolutely. And please, I mean, you and everyone, stop me at any time for questions. I like
Thank
to have
you.
a good dialogue. So please, I like the dialogue. Um, so we all know about data science, right?
Yeah,
We all heard of that. That's just like managing data essentially, right? And all the ways that you can use it to do modeling and all the ways you can do it to do everything else. But at the end of the day, you're still working in an organization, right? And the data has to be used for something. So decision science is the field where that data science piece of work hits the road. Okay, you have all this data, all this understanding. What do you do with that within an organization?
mm,
So it sits between the data science piece and really the business piece. We have all these insights, we have all this knowledge. How are we going to use it within the organization to meet our goals? And so, a typical way, I really come from fintech, as you can kind of see, financial technology, as
yeah,
you see on the screen. My background is specifically in risk and fraud because frankly, there's tons of crime that happens online all the time, especially when there's money involved, right? And
yeah.
so decision science in that context uses all of the data that we collect and know about people who are on the platform to try to model and understand the likelihood of them being essentially a criminal. And this is something that happens in the background all the time. It's not just
Mm,
fintech, it's your Facebook login, it's your Instagram login, it's your Zoom login. They're constantly kind of trying to monitor and understand, is this really you signing in here? Is there any risk for abuse of your account? Is there any risk it's been taken over by somebody? We use tons of data to make those decisions.
yeah.
And when I went to the LSE to study, I studied a management degree, social innovation. I was a bit shocked to find that so much, after being in tech for 10 years, so much of the decision making that happens in the impact sector with nonprofits or social enterprises, et cetera, it's not made using the kind of data that we just use kind of like de facto day to day. And that's
Mm,
what really inspired me to do my venture of like, how do we help organizations that are trying to have a positive impact have more data so they can do a better job? Because really, at the end of the day, it helps you do a better job when you know what's going on the
that's what we're
ground.
here for. Now that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to go and investigate that rabbit hole after this. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's a great field. I love it. I mean, it's my whole
But I like
background.
that
So
bridge, as you say, because it sits in silos quite often. exactly what you always say. There's the data silo and there's the business needs, and they're thinking, well, they've got all the information, but who glues it together? So I love that the
Yeah,
multi-faction element of that. Thank you very much.
absolutely. Absolutely. So any other questions from the group? Again, I'll have some kind of like questions for you guys built in, but just want to open it up before we keep moving forward.
And as April said, do ask as we go along. I am here to keep an eye on chat, but I'm sure once people have started thinking, we tend to kind of get warmed up as we go along.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I hope so, because I would love if you all attending like to learn a little bit about you and what you're working on. What projects are you working on? Are you collecting feedback or data? Do you wish you had more access to information on the projects that you're working on with maybe communities that you're serving, but you don't have the tools for them? If you don't mind, if you have a couple minutes, drop that in the chat because it will help me kind of tailor the rest of our conversation around the kinds of work that you're doing. So, yeah, would love to see that.
Let's maybe pick on Robin to warm up, because I know, Robin, you're working with lots of people on projects right now. What are the sort of bits you've got going on that you're supporting? I didn't warn Robin I was going to pick on him then. Sorry.
We have, yeah, a huge array of projects at different stages. So, an example of one of the projects that we're working on is Meals on Wheels. So, it's kind of creating a UK kind of understanding community of providers of Meals on Wheels services, of information. Within that, there's a huge amount of data around who's offering the services. There's a huge amount of data around where the need for those services are, and then the gaps in between. And the result of that is the creation of various kind of tools, mapping tools. But that's a type of project that, if we think about it, the feedback from people using the services is quite spread out geographically. And the information could help inform policy, could help inform kind of people offering those services to kind of fine tune their offering, and also look at kind of the wider like economic benefits of providing services like that for kind of limiting time, requiring NHS access and things like that. So there's huge amount of opportunity from that, as that's just one project out of many.
Yeah. Yeah. And even just hearing that project off the bat, that's sort of often a gap that happens, which we'll talk a bit about in these kind of projects, is that last mile reporting, that last mile kind of impact measurement. And that's the kind of stuff that can really, I mean, keep you funded if and really able to inform funders, all these kind of other organizations about the kind of work that you're doing and keep you funded, help you improve, do continuous improvement with your programs, this sort of stuff. So yeah, that's a very classic kind of example. That's really cool.
And we've got a
Any
couple in chat as well. Yeah, we've got Anne in chat working on operations efficiency in aviation to help the industry to
other?
decarbonise the sector, trying to collect data on approach routes, movements, fuel consumption, and congestion.
That's
Um,
interesting.
Really interesting. And Adrian, looking at how communities respond to precarity in their water supplies across sub-Saharan Africa, we've collected quantitative data, household surveys, and qualitative data, household interviews, interviews with policy officials. Bandwidth to explore all of the data we have is the real issue. Yeah, do you know what? That's one of the things. I joked about the kind of the data landfill that we have, but we are overwhelmed with data and information, aren't we? That's cutting through what's useful for your project, I think, is one of the challenges.
Yeah, yeah. To that point specifically, Adrian, I think I do a lot of work exactly in the space you're talking about. You're doing data collection in hard to reach places, and the tools we're going to be talking about later, particularly LLMs and AI tools, are incredibly helpful when it comes to turning, especially qualitative data. Also, quantitative, it can do a decent job at analyzing that, but qualitative data into actually actionable themes and like sentiment analysis, all this kind of stuff. We're really in a new frontier of how to handle that sort of data collected from the field. So stay tuned. We'll be kind of talking more about that.
Harriet, we're working on a tabletop game in the context of sustainability and water environments to support decision making for strategic application of policy. We're looking to test and gather feedback on how the principles can be applied in different contexts and what the potential is for different audiences.
Interesting. When I hear that, I do hear customer research,
Mm.
right? And understanding adoption and really kind of honing in on that user experience and understanding what they want. That's more kind of feedback and data collection. So
And
that's
Adrian's put another layer of challenge with the data is language is a real challenge for non-Western languages. So he's got another layer of complexity there too.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. We'll talk more about that actually specifically. There's a lot of new frontiers that can help with that.
Cool.
Awesome. Super cool. Keep dropping stuff in the chat, everybody. If there's other stuff that you want to kind of talk about, very helpful. Appreciate it a lot. What a cool mix of projects. The aviation one, I love that sort of wonky stuff too. That's where decarbonization happens. This is so cool. Awesome. So, taking a step back, I want to situate us. Forgive these dudes down in the lower right corner. Um, some general perspectives on data and how it's used in the world. And like it or not, I mean, tech companies are really, really good at understanding people. That is why they are able to build tools that people use every day. And I think this is sort of a often overlooked part of the tech industry. Again, for better or worse, right? People can't get off their phones, all this sort of thing. Well, at the end of the day, those products are made in a way that people really like, right? It's easy to come onto Zoom, you know where to bring your cursor. When you go onto Instagram, you scroll, you know what's going on. You go onto LinkedIn, you can navigate it easily. These are all tiny, tiny decisions that are made that make it possible for this to be so legible when you're moving into these different digital spaces. And the way that that happens is through a very, one, quick iterative approach to how products are built, but really foundationed on tons of data, right? There's a very, very strong focus on customer opinion, user experience. That is really what it comes down to. We have a lot of skepticism, understandably, about the amounts of data that are collected by tech companies. There's definitely problematic angles to that. But also, they know whether people prefer to click on a blue button or a green button because they do A/B testing to know people prefer blue buttons, right? They know as people are going through a user interface, where do they get stuck? Where do they close a window? Because they're just like, "Ah, I don't know what this is." They look at every single piece of people's user experience, and that is ultimately why they're able to build tools that we can use so easily every day. You think about it, every single platform that you open on your laptop, every app that you open on your phone starts as just a blank canvas. It can basically look like anything, right? And especially when you have a solution that's a bit more new, more novel, understanding how people interact with that is the difference between having something that people use and having something that people don't. If people don't use it, it's like, does it really exist, right? And so having data allows you to unlock a deeper understanding of what your customers want and need, what naturally resonates with them. In some ways, it's really about giving your customer respect because you're expecting them to spend time with you in some form, right? Whether it's a decarbonization initiative or Meals on Wheels. You're expecting them to kind of meet you at the door and accept your service. So we want to make sure that those services are provided at the highest quality possible. And really, that comes from having data. Again, I think it can kind of sound dystopian because we know tech companies collect so much data, but really they are experts at giving people what they want. And I do wonder if taking a little bit of that perspective, quick iteration, feedback, learning, and unabashed willingness to connect with people and understand what they need and go with what they prefer and desire above other things, bringing a little bit of that perspective into the way that we look at things might go a long way because we are very much coming from a landscape where data is used, I mean, per the scientific method, right, to go through and understand and validate our own hypotheses, but opening that up and being a bit more iterative with communities to develop our hypothesis, for example, that might be an interesting new frontier in us being able to better serve the customers that we're trying to work with and help, especially when it comes to things that have like positive social impact. So I want to start with that perspective because again, I think we talk about tech companies in a lot of different contexts, but really they're geniuses at this. So I definitely think there's a lot that we can learn about their approach to this kind of work.
We've got a couple of other projects as well.
Yes, let's hear them.
And we've got broadbands working on finding criteria useful for designing decentralized electricity models. I finished
Interesting.
data collection, but I'm seeking tools and applications for data visualization. And Jodie's put a comment about I'm a language teacher and find AI tools useful and helpful, want to learn more. And I was going to say on learning from the tech giants, we all remember when the UX was horrific. We all remember when things were clunky. We've all got excited about engaging with something, then found it hard and never touched it again. But I think that kind of evolution and seeing projects is always moving forward but never finished is a bit of a cultural change. We're not Our end goal isn't a set. It is back to like the agile kind of project management. It's like it's just moving forward rather than overthinking what good looks like in a way. We need to be really open as to what that end goal will be.
Yes, yes. And I think that's where there's so much, I see this so much in tech. There's a lot of scope for there to just be better conversations between technologists and particularly, in my opinion, people in the social sciences. Because those guardrails that we use a lot, right? Really understanding and thinking about ethical trade-offs, understanding and thinking about like these kind of implications and frameworks for how we approach our work. Those are completely, I mean, frankly, those are completely like absent often, unfortunately, in the tech perspective on things. They could learn a lot from the way social scientists look at the world and look at how they move through the world. Likewise, social scientists, I think, do have some things to learn, especially those who are going off and doing ventures of their own. They do have things to learn about iteration, lightweight kind of like movement and building solutions in line, really laser focused with what people on the ground are looking for. So there's a good opportunity, I think, to have a trade. I'm always lamenting that tech people that I deal with have like I always sort of say like they've never taken a social science class. It kind of shows in the way that
Yeah.
they kind of interact with the world, you know. But there's stuff to be learned on both sides.
And the
And so
tech
that's what
companies are really good at personas, as you said. They know that the amount of data they have. Let's not. That's a horrible kind of rabbit hole to go down it, if you go negative. But actually, they really are serving us what we need to hear. So back when we're looking at our project, our venture, and looking at who exactly we're talking to, whether it's our stakeholders or people we want to engage with or get involved with or sell to, depending on whatever the agenda of the project is, they tech are really good at owning those personas and not being
yeah.
afraid to do the whole tribes thing of going like, here's exactly who I want to talk to, and not talking to the other people, which feels really weird, especially at the beginning of a project where you're like, this could be anybody, but we can't talk to everybody.
Yes, yes, having that kind of go-to-market understanding and understanding really who you're trying to serve.
Yep.
I see this all the time in tech startups, right? A reluctance to do that, but if you can serve one group of people really, really well, you can move from there. But you need to have some kind of
And
starting
they're
point,
your
and doing
ambassadors,
that,
they'll love you. So
they are. Yeah,
if your project has like a vast potential reach,
yeah,
you have to be, I always like, what, who are going to be the easiest people to talk to? Let's go for the people who really already get it, who
yes,
and then and kind of let it grow from there. And it's not failure, but it's be feel quite organic. Because as you
totally.
say, those first people will become your early adopters, they become your ambassadors. They will potentially go off and sell you to other people in their field in different countries or whatever the landscape of your project is. But really being brutal with that is something that we've talked about branding before, we talked about personas. This all feels quite weird. We've never had these conversations like in an academic world before, but actually that's how we will make our project successful, is really owning who we want to help and who really cares and who's going to get involved.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's radically serving too the needs of that segment, right? And that's again, that's important for your business, but that's also a form of respect and it can sort of unearth very interesting wrinkles about the way people navigate things, whether
Yeah.
it's realities of their life that are hard to kind of see from the outside, or for some reason people will click on blue buttons way more often than green buttons. Why is that? I don't know.
It's
That's just how
also
human beings are.
efficiency because a lot of us are
Yeah.
doing this around lecturing, or other
Yeah.
roles. These are, again, good tech, these are our side hustles. These are the things we're passionate about that we want to do more, but we really need to
Yes.
focus and be limited in our data, and UX and all that narrowing in can really help us.
Yes,
Not
yes,
feel
get
just
out into the
frustrated
world.
that another month has gone by, isn't it? Because if you're working on something part-time, the
Yeah,
time flies.
yeah, absolutely. Get it out into the world, understand what people want, what are they saying, don't be afraid of it. I think that is all
That's
also
a
like a
really
fundamental
good
part
thing
of
that
it.
tech companies
Yep.
aren't afraid of, is don't wait for it to be perfect.
Yes.
Get it out
Yes.
there, start some conversations, get some feedback, good and bad.
Yes.
Yeah, don't hold your baby too tight. The world needs to see it.
Yes. 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 And you can let it change through
Yeah.
that too, which is also what you have to do to adapt to the market. The market, I always say this all the time. People will say, like, oh, you don't have a boss now. It's like the market is my boss. You know
Mm.
what I mean? The more I can understand what my boss wants, the better I'll perform,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, another tangent, but I think it's really interesting how we map those two. So I think we can learn a lot from these guys, as you say, tempering it with our own ethics.
Yes. Tempering it with our own ethics, but they are very successful. There's stuff there to learn. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Cool. So, hidden trade-offs. This is just like a starting off point about the way that really the impact sector as a whole, but I mean, there's a lot of, frankly, I see this a lot with researchers and in the academic context too. There's a lot of hidden trade-offs in the way that we do data collection, compromises that we make that underlie our work, and they have for decades now. Basic things like the trade-off between depth and scale, right? You can do interviews. That's such a common way to collect data. They're very rich, but they're not scalable, right? They're slow and kind of plodding. So you have to kind of make that trade-off. Speed and quality. Fastest thing everybody wants to do is make a web form or a Qualtrics survey or something like that. Sure, it's super easy. You can do it. It's sort of even the standard, right? But they have low response rates. That's the reality of it. And you don't have much control over sampling, and you don't have much opportunity to open up the sample that you have because people who are going to tend to respond to those are very motivated. So you end up biasing toward people who are very happy with the service or very unhappy with the service, right? We've kind of accepted that. You never even hear people talk about that because there aren't alternatives on the market. Likewise, convenience versus rigor, right? A very rigorous way to go out into the field and do data collection. I've done this in Nairobi, going out with pen and paper. Go door to door, you ask people questions, fine. Very rigorous. You get to see their context, you get to immerse in their world a little bit. Extremely costly, tons of manual work. Takes 10, 12 weeks to go from being on the ground to being actually in a database somewhere, and commonly in organizations I work with. And so these are the trade-offs. Really, if you look at these kind of options that we have, they're very much from our old world. They're not from the online world that we live in today. This is the kind of stuff that was true by and large 20 years ago, right? Going door to door, sitting down doing interviews. This stuff is important, but it's a hard sell to imagine that like all of our technological transformation of the last 20 years doesn't have an opportunity to impact this way that we approach data too. Really, we are in a swiftly changing landscape when it comes to data. And this talk today, it is about how technology and AI are moving us into a new frontier for data science, especially when it comes to social sciences, qualitative data, this sort of stuff. So we'll be speaking to these new opportunities opened up by mobile access, how AI and LLMs can make large-scale qualitative analysis viable, and how all these strategies can turn this thing that is often a chore into something that you can enjoy and learn from as you run your projects. Right now, you have an interview, you have to like transcribe it, you may have to translate it. There's so much that needs to happen to turn it into something actionable. And we're moving into a time when a lot of those limitations just are going away. They're hugely shifting, and I want social science to be able to keep up with that.
We have
So,
another comment
yes,
from Bridget. Bridget, we are just developing together Playwise, linking children with elderly via social, emotional mini games, and are in the beta phase. But I have to agree, it's scary and really daunting as there's so many things coming up. It's endless plate spinning, Bridget. Thank you for sharing because there's always so many moving parts in a project, aren't there?
I am so tempted to almost just so I didn't do this in my introduction, but I lead the Women Founders program at the LSE, and I work with young early stage founders all the time. And so much stuff that you guys are talking about, it is part and parcel to being a founder. Beta stage, moving through things, being as a founder too, I've just thinking about this the other day. You constantly have so much on your to-do list. Everything you guys mentioned, I resonate with it so much as a founder myself, frankly. It is a really hard thing to do, and there's endless stuff to do. Per what Lucy and I were kind of talking about before, data can be helpful. I'm always going to come back. I'm a decision scientist. I'm always going to come back to it, but um, getting your stuff out there and seeing if people like it, getting data points, understanding what's their feedback, etc. It is a way, it is a way out of some of the mess around whether people are going to buy your product. It's almost like just answer the question. I can't help but turn to that because again, I'm a founder myself, but definitely resonate with a lot of what you guys say in the chat. So, a broad view on what's changing and what has really changed in our world and how that can impact your work and your approach to data. There are two primary shifts for 2026 and going beyond. Um, Mobile is everywhere. this is the way people interact with things. And the way I look at it, it's really a new field research site. It's a viable source of data and interaction for people using your tools, participating in programs, whatever it might be. Mobile has become a real part of our world and our life, and we should look at it that way when we're looking at data collection. And the other, which you guys hear about all the time, AI and large language models, these allow qualitative analysis to be automated at very high quality with very low cost. And so, what are the implications for this, for us doing feedback collection, data collection, user interviews, all this sort of stuff that we're talking about when it comes to commercialization, but also understanding the market that you're working in and these other bits of things. AI and LLMs are absolutely huge. I use them day in, day out in my work, and they are quite amazing and transformative to this space. So again, I'm really looking at things this way because we don't want research-based ventures to be left behind. We don't want the social sciences essentially and things that come from that worldview to be left behind from this. Those tech giants, they are adopting all of these tools left and right because they are so focused on user experience. Let's get a little bit of that into our world as well. Any questions or thoughts on this before diving in deeper?
We have Adrian. Good point. He says one thing we find is that our colleagues in African context are very strong on the IT frontier. All our interviews undertaken on mobile platforms, often implemented by researchers, uploaded and then increasingly analysed using tech tools. That
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I do at my company. And a lot of innovation you're seeing in these more um, technology, I don't want to say tech poor, but kind of lower technology environments because they are resource constrained, right? So just as much as people in sub-Saharan Africa are on mobile, I mean, who has a laptop kind of in that context, right? It's hard, it's expensive. Um, People in London are on mobile too. People in Los Angeles are on mobile. People all around the world are using those same kind of approaches. And this is very applicable beyond those contexts. But a beautiful thing is that we do see a lot of innovation happening in those places in this way. That's what my company, that's the environment that my company works into, and it's cool to see so much innovation happening in these resource constrained places. So
And
yeah,
those
absolutely.
tools have really evolved. I remember when the original Otter, I think was the first one I used to record
Mhm.
meetings, and it wasn't very good. And
Mm.
now, whether you use Granola or Fireflies, I'm always taking that sort of tool with me to record my meetings, my interviews, because we're humans, we're not going to remember everything. And also, if you're trying to listen as well as to document, you end up doing a poor job of both. So
Yes.
I'm starting a cohort tomorrow, and we had 12 interviews. I did six, my colleague did six. We recorded all of those interviews, and I then put them all into an AI platform to then interrogate them, to talk to the
Yep.
cohort, to say what how did they talk about IP? Did they talk about sustainability? Well,
Yes.
obviously, you put that in Notebook LMS, you can put it, in Copilot, whatever tool you're using, but it's giving us such a much richer understanding of our cohort and a much better understanding of what they want, which I can then share with people who are running the workshops. It's
Yes.
such an amazing win. And we had a
Mhm.
really rich conversation because I could listen to them properly, actually build that relationship with the cohort. So using it, that was like a mini piece of research, but it's a gift that's going to keep giving as we go through the entire cohort. We have a comment. Could you help shed some light on your take on LMM allowing qualitative analysis to be automated? Does this mean questionnaire responses can become synthetic or synthesized data?
Two separate questions. We're going to be talking a lot about automating analysis of qualitative feedback that you're collecting. Synthetic data is one of those things that I think has taken off because it sounds cool and is has limited applicability in day-to-day life. So
If
essentially
you're putting it
synthetic
into
data.
Notebook LMS, it's your data.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
nothing synthetic about it. You're putting your data into Notebook and you're asking questions of it, and it's
Yes.
basically it's answering. Does synthetic for you mean almost like the hallucinating?
Synthetic data is a form of data analysis that you see a lot in data science, and it's existed for a long time. So when you have a massive, massive data set, let's just say, example from my own life, right? PayPal is collecting data on people's transactions all around the world, constantly forever, and they have been for decades. And we need to do this again because to prevent fraud and money laundering and all this kind of stuff. They have huge amounts of data. You can use that data to model new data because you have so much of it. I cannot emphasize like trillions of data points. You can use that to model trillions more data points and then based on that get deeper, more rich insights. That's what synthetic data is.
Okay.
When you use a certain type of data that you have tons and tons, like near infinite data points on to model new data sets to dig deeper into things that you're trying to research and model and understand. That's synthetic data. People talk about it because it sounds kind of cool, right? But it's
Yeah.
really for organizations that have just gazillions of data points and are trying to model kind of obscure things that they don't quite have enough data around. I would definitely, frankly,
That's
stay
not
away
where
from
we're
that
here.
for
Yeah.
qualitative. Yeah, 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 because we're trying to stay as close to people as possible. That is like abstractions away from people's day-to-day
Oh,
life.
we've got a
So it's a
question
thing,
about
but
we've got a
yeah.
question about safe use as well, how to ensure privacy and confidentiality when using LMMs in qualitative research. Struggle with the same issue when it comes to using AI tools in communicating my research as well, because I'm essentially inputting unpublished evidence. Now, we talked about this in Blue's session. We talked about Notebook LMS for a really good reason because it's closed and the data stays within it. A lot of institutions are using Copilot, which again is closed, it stays within the institution. What we're basically saying is just don't put it into free chat GPT. So it's all about using the right tool, looking at the privacy policies. Notebook LMS is good, Copilot is good if that's what you've got. Get advice from your IT department in your university if you have any concerns. But for me, if you're using those two tools, you're fine. But again, it's just using you can tell when you're using a tool whether you should be putting confidential data in or not.
Yeah,
Right?
all
What are
that
your
stuff is
thoughts?
really
Yeah,
governed. Yeah,
yeah,
it's governed by the policies of the organizations that you're working with. So if you look into that, choose wisely. Those policies are real, though. There are legal implications for them. If they say that they're a closed system and they share your data, they are going to be in big trouble. So you can rely on what is disclosed in your kind of like user agreement and those sorts of things. But it's really governed on that level and choose wisely. It is possible to use these in a very ethical, safe way.
yeah,
Just be thoughtful when you're making your choice of LLMs.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, any other questions at this point? Lots to discuss, really.
I'm sure there will be. I shall pop in when we have the next bits.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. So, the rise of mobile cannot be understated. We are all on our phones all the time, but it can be kind of hard to connect that with the fact that, I mean, people all around the world are on their phones all the time. 70% of people on the earth use a mobile phone. I mean, that's huge, right? You think about how disconnected rural places are. 70% of people on the world use a mobile phone. Um, it is, it sees penetration across geographies, across age groups. It is absolutely huge. When you're doing data collection, people respond more on mobile phones. I see this in my own organization. We go from having the customers that we work with go from maybe 30% response rates lower on email surveys that they do to like 70% response rates when we're doing it over WhatsApp. Um, as you can see on this, the woman on the right of your screen has a little blue hat on. She is a nun in Uganda using WhatsApp to answer a survey, like our little platform to answer a survey. People use mobile everywhere. It is absolutely where, for better or worse, it's where life is happening. There's a lot of growing adoption too in lower tech communities, whether that's in the UK or in sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia. Strong adoption in low tech communities. It's much more affordable to have a phone than any other kind of digital tool. So it is the place that life is happening again with some chagrin, but it's also a great option if you're trying to understand how people are using your platform or service or intervention or whatever it might be. This is really the site where people spend their time, and it's great to meet them where they are. WhatsApp is a particularly good way to communicate with people. About 3 billion people in 180 countries are on WhatsApp. You probably experience this yourself among your teams, with colleagues, even with customers and like beneficiaries and stuff like that. Often nonprofits I work with will have WhatsApp groups where people are sharing things and chatting, etc. All of that really points to the centrality of mobile for data collection. The world has really changed on this front. And that has implications for research, user research, customer research, all this sort of stuff. It is increasingly viable, and the way that you use it is different than what we've done in the past. What we really see with online surveys, it's like sort of a translation of a census form almost, right? They tend to be really long. It's hard to get feedback from people when you're doing it with pen and paper, you're going door to door. So you want to squeeze everything you can out of the interaction. Mobile is different. You can do short surveys a lot more often. You can use text or voice notes or images for a lot more rich feedback collection because somebody is in their house, they can tell you what they think, right? It's easier to do this sort of thing. AI analysis enables this as well. Also opens a space for follow-up and richer interviews. So you can send people a survey, you can see what they responded, and you can push them a new survey to ask them a follow-up question about something that they interacted with you with. So it's a lot more nimble. Something that I like about that too is that it levels the playing field in terms of your sampling because I can't help but really it's very clear to me that when the primary ways of getting feedback are focus groups and interviews, there's an implicit bias toward people who are frankly more extroverted, right? People who are willing to sit down and talk to you about their experience, people who have more time or more likely to participate in that sort of stuff. If you have kids and parents and da da da, and you're trying to manage your life and you're working different jobs, you don't have time to go somewhere and sit down with somebody for 90 minutes to talk about something, right? There's a lot of bias again that is built into the way that we normally conduct surveys and get customer feedback and information. And anything that we can do to flatten that out and get more people giving us feedback on the tools and services that we're offering, the better. Another thing that these,
I've got a bit of a
yes.
best practice question about WhatsApp. Teresa's saying I really only use WhatsApp for text messages. I can see how LinkedIn, Facebook might work with a link, but how do you share links on to surveys on WhatsApp unless you set up a group? How would you know? Would it be setting up a group? How would you normally approach doing this research on WhatsApp?
Yeah, actually, so that is what again, I'm an expert in this area because this is what we do. My platform, Simba Technologies, we allow you to build surveys and deploy them over WhatsApp from a centralized platform and
Okay.
collect all that data back there. So that's how we've approached this. But you can also definitely send survey links via groups,
Yeah.
one-on-one, these sorts of things. A nice thing about our platform is that it is embedded in WhatsApp, and so people can just respond to WhatsApp messages with their answers, and it goes into the platform. But using even just as a delivery mechanism for links
Yeah.
is better than email because almost all WhatsApps and text messages are read versus emails, it's like a pretty low open rate for those kind of things.
And we
So
got another question from Anne as well. Unsure about the quality of open answers using mobiles or even the answers relatability. People do tend to do it quickly or answering at the same time as doing other things. Data is important, but reliable data is more relevant, in particular if modeling later on. So I guess yeah, her concern is basically if you get a text and there's a question, are you doing it or are you making the tea? So you're not really as engaged. What have you found from your experience?
yeah, if there is a quality degradation, which we haven't seen in particular, I mean, that assumes that people are really paying a ton of attention when they're doing like an email survey or something, right? I mean, there's an equal level of desire to move through it and get past it.
Hmm.
Um, any trade-off that happens is offset by the much higher response rates that you get on mobile. If you get 1 in 100 people really sitting down and thoughtfully filling out a survey versus 60 out of 100 people, kind of like with a medium level of interest filling out a survey, it's still more statistically significant to have the larger sample of respondents. So there's a big trade-off that happens there. Um, the clunky heaviness of surveys itself discourages, in the kind of current state of survey administration, discourages people from doing it thoughtfully because they're really long. More surveys are unfinished on web than there are on mobile, at least from what we've seen. And so definitely there's the possibility of people kind of absentmindedly going through their life. But if you quadruple 5x, 6x the number of responses that you get, it's still more statistically significant than getting the very, very, very low response rates that we see right now to surveys and data collection
And I
in
guess
this
you'd also be
context.
really sharp on how on your questions
Yes.
because of what they're looking size of the screen they're looking at, for example. So maybe because taking that all into consideration, they're going to answer, but they maybe are doing other things, but etc. etc. I guess making sure that the questions are really sharp, they're really unambiguous, and make
Yes.
it that intuitive ease to actually answer.
Which is really how I feel surveys should be in general, right? You
Oh
want all
yeah,
your
but
stuff to be
it narrows it
very,
in even further, doesn't it? Because like
it
yeah,
forces you
because
to.
we've all had
Yes.
waffly ones where we're not quite sure what the answer is.
Yeah.
And if it's on a mobile screen, it's like you've got 20 words or whatever the character count is, which is the optimum.
Yes.
You've got to be really sharp. And also, potentially, if we have different languages here, we've got to be really. This is a real test, isn't it, to make it really good? so that when
Yes.
you get
Yes.
lots of responses, it is useful.
Yes. I see that all the time. The vehicle of delivery forces you to sharpen your questions,
Which
which
can only be a
again,
good thing.
can only be a good thing. And
Yeah,
we hope that that would happen anyway, right? Because I do find it like when I open a survey and I'm like, oh, how long is this? And I'm going through and it's all the pages and just forever. I'm just like, oh my goodness. But you can't do that on mobile. You have to really
no.
make it short and sweet. And it also forces, I've seen this happen in organizations too. It forces you to really understand what you're measuring. Because I'll go in with a new customer and they are like, oh, we have this 90 question survey. And I'm like, what are your goals and what are you trying to understand? And I've seen it really force them to go back and reevaluate the theory of change, what activities they're doing. There's always a lot of mission creep in impact focused organizations. And
Mm.
doing good data collection forces you to focus down and really get clear on what you're trying to measure, which again, ideally we should be doing anyway. Nobody wants to be sitting doing a 90 question email survey
Well,
either,
go
right?
back to that iterative
Yes.
narrative as well. Is you can, if you've
Yeah.
got engaged people, you haven't got to ask them everything on the first contact. You can because I'd like, when I do research, I want to know what happened. So you can go
Yeah.
back and ask them a few more. You can go back and ask them, really make them feel a part of it. We have a question for you.
Yes.
I'm wanting to develop a questionnaire to gather user feedback from surgeons and clinicians from medical device. Mobile data collection feels like a slightly less professional or more informal way of getting in touch with people. Does mobile data collection affect people's judgment of your credibility as a researcher?
Yeah, I have not seen that come through.
Mm.
Again, any if I were confronted with that kind of um, sort of doubt or challenge, it comes down to response rates. Is it more credible to have a really low response rate, or is it better to drive response rates and have a really 360 view of what's going on in people's lives? I haven't seen any concerns about the delivery mechanism. Usually, actually, if you can go from a 20 or 30% response rate to a 70 plus percent response rate, that kind of answers the question on its own.
Yeah.
Um, I don't, there's sort of a stylistic trade-off perhaps to be made there doing a Qualtrics or email survey versus a mobile survey. But if you're really looking at the nuts and bolts of statistical credibility, I mean, having the higher response rate kind of trumps everything else.
Oh, and we,
So
we have another question from Harriet. Your images show people in a workshop context using WhatsApp. Do you apply the same argument, e.g., is engagement increased in comparison to using face-to-face reflection and recording using pen paper, like it is in comparison with email?
yeah, absolutely. So this is a one of the first deployments of my tool in Uganda a couple years ago. Um, yeah, because we got 100% responses. It took about 5 minutes at the start of the workshop. Everyone went through their phones. They did a baseline, midline, endline, and we did a follow-up, and we got a basically 100% response rate.
I love all
Um,
those tools you can use in workshops as well to get them all engaging and creating, the good old word clouds and just kind of getting the group talking. And Teresa's put a really good comment here. We work with vets and they all respond better to material sent by a phone than emails. And I was thinking about the relationships that vets and clinicians and people have with their screens. Their
yeah,
screens are very much, they're quite heavy. I imagine they spend most of their days trying to avoid what they're going to get back to the screen for, but their phone is in their pockets. Maybe that's the relationship. Another comment here, it depends on your organisation as well and whether it allows these channels for surveys. My university limits surveys to MS Forms and quadritics, for example. It also depends perhaps on their population and their literacy. There's a number of factors, and everybody's project is going to be individual. What we're saying here is this is a really great tool for every kind of role if we have
yeah.
the technology and the ability to do it. And again, we're back to this experimental feeling a bit like a startup, playing with different, exploring different ways to have different conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, I mean, research policy is lagging on this front, right? I'm doing a bit of advocacy work on this in the UK as well, where, yes, absolutely, we have a very narrow view of what is acceptable from a research standpoint. But as you're seeing response rates drop off, you see it in polling too, in public polling. You're seeing response rates for calls just drop off. It's well below 10% now. The statistical credibility of your data is hurt by this, and it makes you less able to, let's say, project public opinion on different issues, right? And then there's like political implications for that too. So there's a lot of lag that's happening in this sector, in the research sector, in social science and academia, from the reality again of the rise of mobile. But I do anticipate that changing in the coming years because there are real world implications for our disconnection from public opinion that's resulting from this. So But definitely, there's still policies that exist out there that kind of limit this adoption. Any other questions?
But we had a little flurry. We can go back to the
Yeah,
slides.
I love it.
No, keep it coming.
Yeah, cool. So that is really that is mobile is king. There's a lot of catch up to be done on this, but just from the chat and like the feedback, etc. Yeah, it's an emerging area, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this kind of moves going forward. So next up, the role of AI and large language models. So there is a lot of AI talk, frankly, just in the zeitgeist, is stuff that sounds cool and complicated, kind of like synthetic data, right? It sounds really interesting and cool, but it's not really something that you need to worry about. You don't need to be training your own model. I remember everyone was kind of trying to train their own model a year ago or something. You don't need to do that. The LLMs that exist out there have had billions of dollars poured into them. They work very well. You don't need to kind of do your own thing. You can train your own little mini model within those, but you don't have to do anything beyond that. You don't need to buy GPUs, right? You don't need to have all that sort of stuff. Allow the market to kind of serve us on this. I will say, having worked in tech for 15 years or whatever it is, this is the golden era of AI. Just like back 2010, 2012 was the golden era of Facebook, and 2014 was the golden era of Uber. Right now is when all the AI companies are trying to get market share. So they are providing the optimal good and service at the minimal price that they can possibly offer it just to gobble up market share. This is the time to really get into these and leverage them and use them to the best of your ability, because they are the best and most affordable, frankly, that they are ever gonna be. So if you have a venture that you're trying to spin up, you're trying to understand your customers, you're trying to do all this sort of stuff, this is the time to do it, because this will change in the next 5 and 10 years. It's a pattern that we see all the time in tech. It's kind of like a weird kind of underlying phenomenon that happens. But whenever things start, remember Uber in the beginning was really cheap. Things start off really cheap and really good, and then they become kind of worse over time. So that will be happening with AI, but that means that now and for the coming few years, several years, this is the time to be using them. Um, and like I said, there's a lot of chatter in AI, but there are certain things that AI and LLMs are really, really good at. And whenever we're talking about AI, we're really talking about large language models, right? So things having to do with language are really what they're best at. And they have certain superpowers that I see leveraged for research in ways that are kind of beyond everything else. So, translation. They are fantastic at translation at a really low cost. I regularly am running surveys in English, Spanish, French, and Swahili. Um, Also, global English is something that is covered well using AI. That basically captures English in different accents, and it does a fantastic job of doing translation between these different languages. Is it 100% perfect? No. Is having a translator, a person sitting down translating it, 100% perfect? No. It's probably less perfect and less trackable in its imperfection than LLMs are. So, keeping that in mind, they are fantastic, they're cost effective, and it's really changing the way that we're able to do data collection in different geographies. Fantastic. Transcription. They are great at transcription, again, in many different languages. The integration that we have at my company does transcription in like 120 languages. It's fantastic, and they're very accurate and very good. I'll go in and review them. They're great. This makes large amounts of verbal data, of qualitative data, possible to analyze, which is something that really, again, meets people where they are. If you have a voice memo that people send you, if you're doing a recording of an interview, transcription used to be something, again, you had to sit down and do by hand, word by word. It was very expensive, right? Now, you can more freely collect qualitative data, verbal data, because you're able to transcribe it and turn it into something that can be analyzed. So those two pieces are huge when it comes to breaking down the barriers of why we haven't been able to collect as much qualitative data in the past. And then using AI for thematic and sentiment analysis. Once upon a time, you had to like leverage a small army of grad students to go in and manually code any kind of transcription that you had, right? Any kinds of like language-based qualitative data that you collected. Somebody had to go in and code it and then do thematic analysis and then do sentiment analysis, etc. LLMs are absolutely fantastic at doing structured analysis of large amounts of data. It's a game changer when it comes to doing large-scale qualitative analysis. And if you can't see them, the passion of my voice, there is so much to be unlocked through having more qualitative analysis. We have really been hamstrung by having to turn everything into multiple choice or Likert scales up until now. And again, I'm pretty sensitive to the way that these norms can introduce bias. If you're asking people in sub-Saharan Africa, what is your favorite fruit, and your options are apple, banana, and pear, that may not be what they eat in their daily life. If instead you can start with a more inductive posture and ask in a free response, what is your favorite fruit? And see what 500 people say. You can take the most commonly mentioned fruits from there and then turn that into a multiple choice question, for instance. This opens up so much when it comes to research design, all these other elements that, again, reduce the bias that has been implicit in the way that we do data collection so far. So all of this stuff can be used in research design. Again, you can do adaptive feedback loops when you're doing data collection on things because it's just easier to collect it. And we can have studies that are a lot more relevant to people's lives, especially in an impact context where we're often operating between different cultural groups, between different kind of like maybe socioeconomic groups, et cetera. You can get rid of a lot of the assumptions that we bring to the table with classic surveys and start with a more inductive research approach and then move from there. So AI and LLMs are fantastic. Would love to hear the group's questions on these because, um, again, a lot of the chatter around this space is about things that really aren't that useful in day-to-day life. These key areas, these superpowers, are where LLMs absolutely excel. So any thoughts? I see some stuff in the chat popping up.
Oh, I was putting in the micro credentials form. The QR code just
Oh, yeah,
worked.
yeah,
The
yeah. Cool,
QR
cool.
code does work for me. I just checked it, but I'm sorry, Anne, that it hasn't worked on previous ones. What tools are
Awesome.
everybody using? Maybe that's a good question. What tools are people using? Because I guess
And
there
how are
are,
you using them?
because we have like, I think that obviously institutions are Microsoft houses, so that's Copilot is obviously going to be in there. But what are we using personally? What sort of tools are we exploring, and how could we apply them to our projects or research, or maybe how we're using them right now? I know, Robin, I can pick on you a little bit while people are putting their points into chat. 'Cause I know that you just love exploring all these tools and using them.
Yeah, big fan.
What's your favorite tool right now? What are you using from an AI perspective all the time?
Well, all the time, I guess it goes from ChatGPT down through things like Perplexity, ideogram for image generation, and one that I've just been playing with in the last couple of weeks because it's become quite, I think, talked about is Suno, Suno, which is music generation, and it's just kind of mind blowing. I don't use it for anything commercially, but it's just interesting to see where that will take an entire industry in a very kind of quick amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
April, people are thinking, I think right now. April, what's your favorite tool right now? What are you exploring? Whether it's a new tool or
Yeah, I really I have trained my ChatGPT model to the extent that now I'm a bit, it's interesting to see how this has happened. I'm like locked into the ecosystem because I invested so much time in the analysis and kind of like using it for, so we use it for a lot of sentiment analysis within my job, and that's how we have our connections um, for sentiment stuff. And so we've done so much work training it that it does a really good job. One thing I will say about thematic and sentiment analysis, you have to engineer your prompts thoughtfully
mm,
and manage this really, it's like a kind of early employee to be very specific about your requests and spot check it for like if I'm doing thematic analysis and I ask it to give me the top 10 themes mentioned in a data set, I will also ask it to count each theme and give me examples of words that it's using to associate with that theme, just so that I can check it and go back and spot check and count the number of times that those words are appearing, et cetera, and make sure that it's working correctly. So you want to have those boundaries on it, but I've invested a lot in that. So that is, at least for thematic and sentiment analysis, some of the key stuff that we've done.
cool? Thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? I thought this would be a hot topic, but actually people were really into mobile.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So here's an example of the basic model that can be used to kind of go through all this different data. And we do this a lot day to day in my work, but this is something that you can just do in yours too. Research surveys can be sent at low cost over text message to communities, to customers, this sort of stuff. And AI can be used to analyze large amounts of the qualitative data that you collect. Again, doing stuff over text message, especially over WhatsApp, because it's so rich with qualitative feedback that you can get from voice memos or from photos or like this sort of stuff. AI is fantastic at categorizing photos, all this. It's great at turning this type of multimedia rich feedback into actual hard data points. It can be used to translate it. It can then be reviewed immediately. You eliminate a lot of the time lag that we see in data collection. You don't have to sit and transcribe. All that kind of piece of it is eliminated in this. And then you just see increased community participation, stronger relationships with the customers that you have, with the people you're trying to serve, and it ultimately leads to more successful ventures. Going back to at the start of our talk, it's that iterative, lightweight approach to data collection that can unlock so much and also get founders out of that stuck position when it's like, I don't know if people are going to use this. Are they going to like it? Like, da, da, da. You know what? You can ask. You can ask. Don't be worried about it. You can always iterate and change. And it is just a quick iterative way for you to understand adoption in the communities that you're trying to work with. A quick case study. Because International is an organization that I've worked with for about a year and a half, and they distribute a novel shoe in rural Kenya that kind of grows with kids' feet. And when they first came to us, they had a lot of different programs going. They had all kind of just entrepreneurship programs, community development programs, this shoe thing, then other stuff for kids. They had like all kind of stuff going on. And so we sat down using Simba to do, and this kind of like mobile and AI-based data collection to do their work. Made them revisit their theory of change. They sit down with it, understand how they were doing what they were doing, why they were doing what they were doing, and they narrowed down really again to their original cause, which is shoe distribution. They started off doing inductive research, understanding the context of the communities that they work in. Yes, shoes are important, but what else is important? Like a million other things too. They just had an opportunity to capture some of that. They also do their participant observation, doing field visits using Simba. So basic, just kind of like convenience assessments. If you're going around and you're seeing a group of kids, how many of them have shoes, what kind of shoes do they have, etc. They can really make the best of their field visits because otherwise, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but when I do a field visit, it's like, oh, it's such an interesting experience. I have all these insights and then I go home and I forget about them all. This would allow them to capture it as they were going along. And now they're in the middle of doing longitudinal assessments of the impact of this kind of shoe distribution on families, teachers, kids participating in programs. They have a lot less foot injuries when they have good shoes, so they're able to better capture that. So a bit of a case study on like using lightweight mobile-based data collection opens up a lot of possibilities, and the AI analysis of this kind of data that we collect, um, it's a game changer. It makes this kind of rich high level data collection accessible to smaller organizations and to small teams where it really wasn't before. They would have had to, again, hire an army of translators and transcribers to do all of this. And so it is truly a new frontier in this space. So I want to open up for some thoughts, takeaways. Do you think these tools could be viable for your projects? Any other questions you have around data collection, these kind of contexts, data stuff that you're trying to figure out within your organizations? Lucy mentioned to me that people kind of have different data repositories and don't know what to do with them. For what it's worth, the biggest organizations in the world have the same problems where you have siloed data here and over here. It's kind of a persistent issue, but yeah, we're in a new frontier and we're getting to a place where technology isn't something that happens outside of the academy. It's really something that you can use in your study and your research and your customer experience kind of stuff. And having that rich data and reporting while keeping costs low can make your venture a lot more competitive and can make your vision of that more real. So just want to open it up to the group for other
I,
questions.
I was going to ask how difficult it was to do that theory of change with that international project because projects go off piece because grants come in and because you said there's so much more they could be doing. How did you get them back into that focus and what would you recommend to someone sort of starting out to try and avoid getting to that level? Because you just want to, you're getting embedded in the community, you want to help, you want to say yes, it might be a grant that sends you off, but then you end up with the mess that you had to unpack and bring back, which probably took a lot of time and energy.
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, when you're doing real rigorous data collection, it sharpens your mind around these things because if you are doing 16 different projects and you have 5 questions for each project, you have an untenable number of questions, right, that you need to ask people. And that is a hard fact. of doing a lot of different projects, but it also points to some slippage and mission creep that these organizations experience all the time within the org. And that is symptomatic of a distribution of resources, which is certainly not the most efficient, right? And so doing the data collection itself prompts this within organizations. They went off and did their theory of change reset on their own. I didn't have to prompt them to do it because it's like if you want to do good data collection, which they were desperate to want to really understand what is the impact of this? Are we having an impact? There was a bit of an existential kind of question around that, right? They had to go back and reevaluate this, and having that strong data collection and the avenues to do that in their context, which was again sub-Saharan Africa, rural Kenya, it's hard to get data otherwise. It
Yeah.
forced them to focus their mind, and it encouraged that whole theory of change revisit, which they're in a much better spot now that they've done that. They're very focused in their resource distribution, and they're on their way to having some really strong, robust impact measurement, which is pretty unheard of for a small organization.
That's really impressive. We have questions for you. Adrian has asked, is there a good tool for capturing handwritten notes? Pen and paper is quite helpful, especially when for the field notes you mentioned. Doesn't need power, but rarely gets written up. I've taken photos, but I guess there could be an angle of it. Depends how good your handwriting is, Adrian. Because I've taken photos when I've done a big whiteboard and just put it into chat, and it can read it if depending on the writing. What tools have you used in that scenario?
Yes, because we do our stuff over WhatsApp and that's pretty accessible, we've avoided having this specific problem, but we do have some field teams who work with us who still do pen and paper and doing photographs of that and doing transcription essentially into computer text of those photos. It's a viable option. I haven't looked at this in a few months, but Adrian, if you want to send me a note, I can like send you some good options for doing that. Like Lucy says, very viable to do photos and it'll turn it into written text, which then you can analyze. So yeah, lots of ways to engage the field
I didn't
using.
think it would work because I'd done all these. You know, you get whiteboard excited when you get into workshops, and we had we had a room full of them, so we did loads of stuff. And I looked at it and thought, oh my gosh, if I write this down on a bit of paper, it's still not going to move my conversation forward. So yeah, I took a photo and I was quite impressed. Obviously, you've got to then tidy it up. As with all things AI, it
Sure.
doesn't give you the final thoughts because it doesn't have any of the context. But if you've got the transcription, maybe of the conversation, which is another good thing to do, if you could be maybe recording the conversation as well as your notes, that would help. Um, Bridget said, in terms of qualitative data, how do journals react if, for instance, you say it was an AI-driven analysis? How do you report it?
How do journals react? So I haven't, we don't do this kind of research for publication. We do it really within the venture context, right? And so like for again, iteration, user experience, customer experience, this sort of stuff, beneficiary opinions and that sort of things. I would suspect that, like we said before, I'm not sure where journals are when it comes to policies around AI-based analysis, et cetera. But let me say again, AI analysis is not really a catch-all. You'll want to specify. AI was used for transcription
Mm.
of notes in Swahili, English, and French, let's say, if you're doing stuff in Sub-Saharan Africa. Fine. Um, if you're specific about the way you're using it and you provide additional insight into the strategies that you use to do that, you're doing it for translation, for transcription, specifically AI is used in these ways, that I would imagine, and I don't know how journals are approaching this again, that is more defensible. You don't want it, because the problem is people will, and I see this a lot, people will just dump stuff into an LLM and be like, oh, tell me what this is. That's not analysis. That lacks the rigor to get you the outcomes and insights that you're looking for in general, right? And it's kind of like not a very robust way to approach it. So if you go to a journal or any other kind of, frankly, even within your own organization, if you're looking at it that way and you just kind of want to put stuff in there and see what comes out, that's kind of a fun experimental way to go about it. But you want to be specific about the way you're using it. And in my opinion, rely on these superpowers. It was used for transcription in these languages. We also use it for translation from Swahili and French into English. We validated translations with maybe one or two of them with a native speaker for da 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 da. You want to be specific about the way you're operationalizing use of AI because it's not only for reporting purposes, it's also for your own edification, right? And knowing that you have the most reliable data that you can get. But specificity here really counts. And again, focusing on these superpowers, you're doing thematic analysis. I always report So we're do the stuff that we make usually goes to boards and donors and that sort of stuff, right? I will report in the appendix. We have, okay, thematic analysis top 5 themes. In the appendix, I'll say the count of the number of mentions of each theme and sample quotes from each theme so that people get a bit more of the flavor and the texture of what people are talking about when they're saying that they need more financial support in their context or something. What are they actually saying? You want to draw that out, put that stuff in your appendix, and it goes a long way both for you understanding things, but also credibility with the audience that you're talking to.
I want to bring Robin into this as well. Not only he's got some examples of where projects can benefit from this approach, but I mean, Robin, you're having this conversation all the time. You're a huge you love the tech. You love having a play on this stuff, and you are forever bridging that gap.
Yes, I do love the tech. I love data, generally as a means to particularly kind of progress projects. And I think as you go, we get, I guess, we get more advanced, more mature. But like a really great example I mentioned before, Meals on Wheels. So their start point was having some infographics about the outputs of their research. And we put that on a platform that was then starting to be downloaded. We could tell that there was interest there. So we used the data to do that. And then it also told us who wanted us to kind of contact them, or the academic to contact them. So it helped build that community. That then grew into kind of this idea of creating an interactive map, which was again tested with users. So it was shown that actually this was being designed with them, so they were able to feedback directly. That data was captured, and now they have a website. I saw yesterday they announced, because they've gone through that, they're now more advanced kind of web analytics. 32,000 unique visitors to that website. That data that they're using is feeding back into what they're doing directly, but also allowing them to unlock more funding. And that's the thing which I should have said, is each of those steps, the proof of the data allowed the argument for more funding to expand the project, expand the geographies, and so forth. So that it's just, I think when you're thinking about this data collection, you should start somewhere, and then as you go, kind of tap into the right sort of tools. But I can see loads of usage now for some of our more some of our projects where actually they are dealing with lots of end users and beneficiaries that are remote in different geographical areas, and a lot of them are actually, their primary way of communicating is via WhatsApp. And so we could definitely see, mechanisms by which they could start to utilize where their community is, and conversing and sharing information to actually become, way more sort of sophisticated. And April, what you're saying is in a cost effective and a resource effective sort of way, which is, I think, like really exciting.
Yeah, this makes me think about how, and I think about this a lot. We can't let perfect be enemy of the good, right? The reality is, in a lot of distributed environments, distributed communities, rural communities, we're not collecting much, if any, data from them at all, you know? And so having some kind of vector that we can use to stay in touch with them, it is better for us as service delivery people, having interventions, whatever it might be. And it's better for them too to be brought into the fold of like, hey, I'm participating in this program, I use this tool, I use this service, whatever it might be. And they're able to give feedback and kind of share their perspective on it. Like it is opening up a lot of new things. We can kind of take for granted how connected we all are in these cities and environments that we live in. But there's a lot of people who people don't ask them what they think, and having a way to do that, it's again, I come back to this a couple of times, but I think it's really about respect for these different communities and bringing them into the fold of stuff that's happening with and around them.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just got people helping each other in the chat. Harriet saying Copilot does a very good job of transcribing handwritten notes and also providing structured summary. I mean, I would always say play with the tools you've got access to, because most of them are they're in a race with each other. So if chat
Yeah.
has a functionality, and actually Copilot's run by chat, isn't it? Isn't it in OpenAI anyway? So anyway, check the tools you've got and plug into them.
Yeah. Yeah. But don't be afraid to just play with them and leverage them. There's so much that they can do, and they've come a long way in like even a year. They're moving quickly. This is the golden age. So use them now.
We will go more into that prompt structuring with Jules in a couple of sessions' time. As you say, we've mentioned it when we were talking to Blue. It's like having an intern. You've got to be really, really structured and really considered and thoughtful about what you ask it to do. It can't read your mind yet. So it doesn't know exactly what you want it to have in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts or questions? We can kind of start closing out, but also you can ask me anything around tech stuff because again, I think I kind of am in these spaces a lot, and there aren't a lot of really kind of like deeper technologists who end up chatting on impact stuff because they just work in their own world a little bit. You get again people kind of from the strategy side or the marketing side, but when it comes to like tech and building and databases and da da da, happy to field any questions around that stuff too.
And you've got your details there as well. So if something comes up,
Yeah,
if you have like a light bulb moment of, oh my God, I wished I'd asked April this, get in touch.
please do. The door is 100% open.
We have a question about what are your views on using proprietary? I think there may be some more to that coming.
Let's see. Let's see.
We wait for the second half of that question.
Yes, yes.
April, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for getting up bright and early to see
Yeah,
us.
no
Thank you
worries.
for being a part of this conversation because this was a late edition. Thank you for everyone who's dialed in, but it just is a really rich conversation. So I'm gonna